In this video on atomic structure, we'll look at radioactive contamination and also irradiation and what the terms mean. You may have noticed lots of yellow radioactive barrels in the background. Well, let's imagine that they contain lots of radioactive substances, so they're continually releasing alpha, beta and gamma into the atmosphere. However, we would only consider it to be contamination if they leaked onto other materials, or maybe it leaks into a water system, in which case the radioactive atoms would then be part of the water system and provide a source of contamination. And of course this would be considered a hazard because having radioactive atoms decaying in the water system would therefore not be a good thing. Grass would then absorb the radioactive water and itself become contaminated because it contains the contaminated atoms that are radioactive. Sheep may then eat the radioactive grass, and following that in the food chain, humans may then eat the radioactive sheep. So in theory, both the sheep and the human would become radioactive because they contain those radioactive atoms that are still decaying. Now this is a very simplistic way of looking at it because you don't have a radioactive sheep that glows green. However, we can still consider it to be a hazard, but it also does depend on the type of radiation emitted because remember, alpha only travels a certain distance, beta a bit further, and gamma even further than that. At the start of the video, I mentioned the word irradiation. So irradiation is the process of exposing an object to nuclear radiation. The irradiated object does not become radioactive itself. So let's go back to our sheep. If we have all these sources of nuclear waste dotted around in the field, as long as the waste does not leak and contaminate the local area, the sheep themselves will not be eating any of the radioactive atoms and therefore won't become radioactive. However, they'll still be exposed to the radiation, the alpha, beta and gamma that's able to pass through from the radioactive source into the atmosphere. This may then cause the sheep to become unwell because it's not necessarily safe to be that close to radiation. So they have been irradiated from the supply, but they're not themselves releasing radiation from their body like they would be if they'd been contaminated by eating the radioactive atoms like on the previous slide.